Early on in my career, I was a motorcycle salesperson, and I think that can be a dream job for anybody, but because I was a broke kid at the time, it was especially a blessing for me. However, I quickly learned that, no job is perfect. So here are 5 things that absolutely do rock about being a motorcycle salesperson, and also 5 things that kind of suck about it.
Number one thing that sucks the most, not because it actually sucks the most, but it's because it's what I sucked at the most, so I disliked it the most, is financing. When a customer comes in, they can pay in full, they know what they want. It's an easy day at work, right? But when you have to do a financing application this way, with a customer, you get to learn all about their financial situation, and that can get weird. And I'm sorry, I'm very bad at U-turning right now. I always remember I had a customer who wanted to buy our most beautiful, most expensive motorcycle we had. It was a Ducati Street Fighter. This guy was in his early 20s. And his insurance was going to cost him about $5,000 a year. Now, having seen all of his finances, knowing he was living at home, I knew that he would be okay, but this would financially cripple his future for the next 5 years. Like, he could forget about ever saving up and moving out of his parents' place during this time, right? When you're the salesperson, you are being paid to sell someone the motorcycle that they want, to make a sale for the place you work for. But at the same time, as a person, as a motorcyclist, as somebody who wants to look out for a younger rider, do you want to make this guy financially cripple his future? And how do you juggle having mouths to feed at home and wanting to look out for this person and needing to look out for your job and your best interests? And speaking of people, this is where all the riders come to meet up in this town that I'm in on my ride across Italy right now. Everybody meets up here along their rides, and then we all go out for a rip, either coming from this way or up this way. Anyway, long story short, there's a lot of moral and ethical issues there, and when people need financing and you see that their finances are not great, it's not a fun day at the office. There are a lot of fun days at the office, and that brings us to the first good thing, which is that you're being paid to sell, but a big part of selling is adjusting your mirrors and socializing, and that sometimes means that you end up meeting amazing people. So part of the reason why I'm here right now is because I met a couple who sold their house and basically almost everything they owned so that they could ride motorcycles around the world. That's a huge inspiration for my life, and it's led me to make some awesome decisions. Here I am, and this is the marching band, okay? They got a marching band coming through this town because, they're not playing now, obviously, because this weekend is a patron saint festival for the town, yada, yada, yada. Amazing experiences that I made because I got paid to have these conversations with people. That's, it's so cool. I even met customers who, 10 years since I've left the dealership, we're still friends. And it's great. Honestly, it's great if you like meeting other riders. It's awesome. The flip side to that is the second thing that sucks about being a salesperson is, and I talked to speaking of meeting riders, hello everybody. I talked to 3 different motorcycle salespeople, and everybody told me that their biggest frustration was the tire kickers, right? Tire kickers are the people who, they go into the dealership and they just want to look, they just want to talk, they just want to feel important. They're never actually going to buy a freaking bike from you. It turns out there's a weird science behind why they do it too. When we talk about, in Italy, people wave with their foot instead of with their hand. I don't know if it's a soccer thing or whatever. Anyway, the weird science behind the tire kickers is when we talk about a goal or what we're going to do or what we're going to be, even if we never actually take steps to do it, our brain releases dopamine. It's a feel-good hormone. We get hooked on the little dopamine kicks, right? So subconsciously, we're making ourselves feel good just by showing up and talking to the sales guy, even if we're never going to buy from him. And the worst part is that scientists realize that the more you get these little dopamine hits, the less drive you actually have to buy the bike and do the purchase and do the actual thing. So not only do they waste 20 minutes of your day as the salesperson, like once a week, every week for a month, then they just disappear altogether. And it's just a huge waste of time. They suck. It's one of the parts of the job that sucks. The second good thing, though, is that you are being paid to usher in the next generation of riders. And a lot of people will come in, they will buy from you, and they don't know much, right? The internet's great, you can learn a whole lot. But for a lot of these guys, just having 10, 15, 20 minutes of your time, they can get so much information, save themselves so much time Googling, and it'll be a really huge help to them. And as somebody who's made a couple hundred videos, look at this view. This place is great. As someone who's made a couple hundred videos aimed at helping motorcyclists, I totally appreciate and love what a huge help it is to them. It makes you feel good, right? So it's a really rewarding, it's a great feeling. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Kind of distracted, kind of falling behind here. Let's talk about the third bad thing, which is people don't necessarily get what the price of motorcycles really are in terms of what they actually really sell for. Sometimes maybe it's a rider who he bought the exact same model 20 years ago and it was, let's say, $7,000 and now it's $10,500 and he's upset because it costs 50% more for the same bike. And when you account for inflation, this guy doesn't realize that he's actually getting a better deal now by a couple $100s than he was 20 years ago, but he only sees the number, he doesn't see the bigger picture, right? Or sometimes you have a customer who maybe they bought during peak pandemic prices when prices were really high, or maybe they bought during when I entered the business in the tail end of the recession when prices were really low. And they don't necessarily understand what the value of motorcycles are today because they only have their perspective from that time of when they purchased. And it's basically what I'm trying to get at is it's tricky because you need to juggle presenting someone with a reality that contradicts their reality, and you got to do this without coming across as argumentative or without coming across as a dick. So it's tough. The third good thing though is that, you know, speaking of money and timing, selling motorcycles, it can be pretty financially rewarding if you're in the right place at the right time. Motorcycle industry is super cyclical. There are boom periods, there are bust periods. There's a lot of things outside of your control. Like maybe a hot new motorcycle comes out and everybody wants it and you get a ton of pre-orders. Pre-orders are basically like free money, right? You didn't really have to work very hard to make that sale. Flip side to that is sometimes you can't get enough units to fill the pre-orders because sometimes the popular bikes go to other countries that are more popular, other big dealers that are more popular, and if you're in a small market and a small dealership, you don't always get the units of the stuff that you want, and that can make things hard. So, you know, there's a lot that the customer doesn't always see or think about, basically. And that leads me to the second last bad thing. The fourth bad thing is sometimes people want something that maybe you wouldn't buy yourself. Like when a customer is excited for a motorcycle that you just respect and you're like, that's a good bike, it's easy, right? They're excited, you're excited, it's great. But what about when a customer wants to buy something that you think you don't like it, or you think it's unreliable, or maybe you even think it's dangerous? That's when your morals and your ethics come into play, and I'm sorry, I'm totally falling behind here. I don't know these guys, so they're not waiting for me anyway, but whatever. Royal Enfield could offer me $1 million sponsorship, I wouldn't take it, right? I know they've had quality control issues, I've touched on that in a number of videos in the past. As long as people are making informed decisions, that's okay. That's what I thought up until I realized that there is a number of recurring rear brake failures on the Interceptor 650 and the Continental GT 650. Royal Enfield dealers have acknowledged it. We're slowing down now, huh? But they won't do any. Royal Enfield won't do anything about it though, which kind of sucks. So let's say you know these rear brake failures keep happening at high speeds, and some guy comes in with his wife and his kids, and he tells you he wants to buy that Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. Are you going to be able to live with yourself if you sell him one? I can't do that, and that's why I don't sell motorcycles for a living anymore. And I think I'm going to get gas now. Alright, just got gas. So let me tell you about the fourth thing that rocks about being a motorcycle salesperson, and that is when you do sell a motorcycle, it feels amazing. The paperwork is signed, the payment goes through, customer's excited and happy, you're excited and happy. If you're like me, your head has probably already done the math on what your commission is going to be and what you're going to spend it on. If you have targets, and that's one more sale, gets you closer to your target, that's great. Basically, when you're selling great, safe motorcycles cleanly and fairly that you believe in, everything about a great view. Everything about selling a motorcycle just feels awesome. It's great. It's awesome. And that leads us to the final bad thing, which is sometimes motorcycles, even great motorcycles, right, are just not a great fit for the people buying them. I had a customer who, he had all the money to spend. I did not have a motorcycle expensive enough for his taste. He was basically about to retire, wanted to get back into motorcycling after like, I think 30 years hiatus, so that he and his wife could basically do what I'm doing and ride across an entire country. You might already know where this is going. Buddy ends up buying a $30,000 BMW K1600 GT. Basically, it's a 800-pound motorcycle, right? Until you add the 60-year-old rider and his passenger and their cargo, and then it very quickly becomes a 1,200-pound motorcycle. Guess how many times he dropped this thing before his wife ended up getting hurt? Sometimes you can't stop people from being their own enemy, but with motorcycles it's even worse because they can get hurt because of you not being able to stop them. And sometimes, is it even your place to stop them? Like, it's being a salesperson really is kind of tricky and weird. And I guess that brings us to the last good thing. First, let me just tell you that up in the mountains, as soon as you get into like some shade, temperature drops a good few degrees and it feels so much better. Now, that whole saying of, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, I think that we both know that it's not a saying that we should be taking like literally, right? Like, anyone who's worked in sales, I'm not trying to disparage you guys. I know there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. There's a lot of clienteling. There's a lot of stuff customers don't even know that we do, right? At the same time, we're not exactly laying bricks or pouring concrete either, but it is still work. I get that. The flip side is that if you are someone like me, if you love bikes, if you love talking about motorcycles, if you could do this all day while you ride, no problem, you're going to meet awesome people. You're going to keep in contact with them. You will have days, though, where you might love what you're doing, like I did, but you will absolutely feel uncomfortable. You will have to find ways to juggle the ethics and the morals of the job of balancing this heavy bike right now. Actually, I got my... There we go. You know, balancing what kind of person do I want to be versus do I have enough money to pay for me and my dog's vet bills and my basement apartment rent. Anyway, if you guys are interested in seeing why less and less motorcycle shops and dealerships are opening versus how many are closing, and the truth of that, which actually has way less to do with... Those guys are brave. Way less to do with sales and demand as it does with other factors. Check out the video that I'm going to link to right up here. Would you ever consider being a motorcycle salesperson? Do you think you would be a good one? I know I struggled with it sometimes. I would love to hear what my other motorcycle people have to say, so please do leave me a comment. I'm Adrian from YouMotorcycle. Thank you guys so much for watching from up here in the hills in Abruzzo. Ride safe, but have fun. Peace.